As Andy prepares to go to college, his childhood toys must decide what they want their future to be. Join us as we chat about little kids who swallow sharp objects, teenagers who don't listen, and trilogies that should have stayed trilogies. We belong together as we see if Toy Story 3 stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator with a glut, and Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Lotso Huggin James Brief.
I don't smell like strawberries today, but it's good to be back for the third and final of our reviews of the Toy Story films.
Yep.
And the reason we're doing these three Toy Stories, of course, is because of the release of Toy Story 5.
Right.
And I have not seen Toy Story 4. I saw the first three, obviously, for this podcast. But I saw a one-line review of Toy Story 5. He would summarize the first four movies as somewhat similar in that there is some kind of rescue or lost mission, finding something, and the toys have to go on some adventure to find something or rescue someone. Whereas the fifth movie is not that story. It's a new story. It's not just a cash grab. And there's certainly something brand new to say about the Toy Story idea. I was wondering what you thought of that.
I guess so. Toy Story 5, I saw it yesterday with the family. And, you can get this from the trailer or even the poster. It's about technology. Basically, Bonnie gets an iPad. And how does that change the dynamic of kids playing with toys, which is what these movies are all about. And it kind of makes sense that that's where the franchise would go in this day and age when you see kids who, sometimes play with toys, but you also just see a lot of kids on their iPads.
I had actually seen another little YouTube short about Quentin Tarantino and his opinion on the Toy Story franchise. I don't know if you ever heard that.
He loves Toy Story 3, right?
Well, he basically says that he refuses to watch Toy Story 4. This is before 5 came out. And he says that the Toy Story 3 ended so perfectly, he did not need to see Toy Story 4.
I feel like I don't often say this, but I agree with Quentin Tarantino that Toy Story 3 is the perfect end to the Toy Story trilogy. And it did make me think of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was announced as a fourth installment. And my reaction to that was, why? You don't need to. The trilogy ended and it was a perfect ending. And I think that we kind of, as a society, probably because of Star Wars and Back to the Future and Indiana Jones, we kind of decided that 3 was the magic number. De La Soul probably helped with that too. But you know what I mean? Like, it was, you do a trilogy and then you're done. And that doesn't have to be the rule. It's kind of arbitrary. But with the original Star Wars trilogy, the original Indiana Jones trilogy, with the Back to the Future trilogy and the Toy Story trilogy, it's 3 movies, but it is one story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you can let the end be the end. Toy Story 4, I saw once and don't really remember it, but I remember walking out of the theater and thinking, yeah, that didn't need to exist, which was exactly what I felt after watching Crystal Skull. Sometimes just narratively, you feel like you didn't have to. I understand why the studios wanted to do it to make money. Show business is a business. I get it. But some of these franchises really did work as a trilogy.
I don't think there's really that much of a rule that it ends at 3. I think it ends when the money doesn't come in anymore, which is, why Toy Story 4 came. I thought you were going to say that as a society, we decided that nothing ever ends.
Definitely.
In good or bad ways. Sometimes you have movies like The Matrix Revolutions. Oh, no, Matrix Resurrection.
Right.
That came out after the trilogy that, for better or for worse, kind of told the story. And then they just kind of made a brand new one.
And you liked that Matrix movie, right?
I thought it was a nicer ending to the characters of Neo and Trinity than the Matrix Revolutions. I think the third film did them pretty dirty, but I did not think it was a great film.
I thought that was another terrible, terrible fourth installment. It makes me think of a joke from The Simpsons. It's just like a visual gag. There's a movie marquee that says, Space Mutants 4, the trilogy continues. Like the reception for a lot of these things tends to be meh. Did we need it? And again, I'm talking about the reception from a story perspective, because a lot of these movies make a lot of money. So that incentivizes the studios to keep bringing back these old franchises. Die Hard was probably better off as a trilogy, but they brought it back for a fourth and a fifth movie. Jurassic Park is another one. That was a trilogy. It was over and done with. And then they made Jurassic World.
I'd argue Jurassic 4 was perfectly reasonable to make. I always want to see what an actual Jurassic Park amusement park with, let's face it, venture capital money and all the stupid margaritas. And I was interested in that story. I think that was a perfectly reasonable Lego sequel to make. The next ones with cloning and locust clouds and let's bring back all the original people and do nothing with them. These things are less worthy.
I still do hold on to the idea of a trilogy. When we were growing up, there was a holy trinity of trilogies: Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. Of those three, the only one that remains just the trilogy is Back to the Future. And every now and again, it will pop up on my social media feed that Robert Zemeckis says in an interview, will there be another Back to the Future movie? No. Over my dead body. He says that, and people cheer him for that. People love that he has that attitude. They also love that I think Universal can't make another movie while he's alive. Something about the deal he signed or the rights or something. But people like that. I like that. I don't want there to be Back to the Future 4 about Jules and Vern rescuing Uncle Marty from something. I'm really good with that story being just a trilogy. You said it earlier. We live in a world where nothing ever ends. To me, it is a little disappointing. And I do think that Toy Story 3, it epitomizes that argument. You can end it with 3 and it would be fine, because this movie does definitively end this story, despite the fact that there's a 4 and a 5. But let's get into Toy Story 3, this movie that was the perfect ending of this trilogy. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, the movie is about Andy as he prepares to leave for college, forcing Woody, Buzz, Jessie, and the rest of the toys to face an uncertain future. After a misunderstanding, the toys are donated to Sunnyside Daycare, where they initially believe they have found a new home with children who will play with them forever. But they soon discover that Sunnyside is controlled by the tyrannical teddy bear Lotso, who runs a daycare like a prison. Woody helps his friends escape, but they end up in a dump. After avoiding the incinerator, they return home to Andy, who gives the toys to a young girl named Bonnie. With her, the toys begin a new chapter while saying goodbye to Andy. I'm not crying, you're crying. But I don't need to ask you if this was a big hit when it came out in 2010, because I remember this was a monster hit for Disney and Pixar.
Absolutely. This film came out on June 18th, 2010, and it had, amazingly, a $200 million budget.
Right.
This movie opened up at number 1 with $110 million, and it wound up making $415 million domestically. And interestingly, this is the first one to go over $1 billion worldwide.
Right. So the reason that Toy Story 3 had a huge budget, and the reason that there was such a long gap between Toy Story 2 and 3, was because there was a deal between Disney and Pixar. Again, remember, for a long time, they were separate companies. Pixar had to make, I think it was 3 or 5 movies to fulfill their contract. It was determined that Toy Story 2 didn't count because it was only for original movies, not sequels.
Oh.
Yeah. So the people at Pixar were pissed. And it was a point of contention between Pixar and Disney about which movies count towards their obligation and which don't.
How did no lawyer pick up on that?
My understanding of it is that Disney was maybe technically correct about the language in the contract, but Pixar was pissed and the relationship had really soured. Pixar was basically going to take their movies elsewhere. They were going to talk to Warner Brothers and any other studio. And meanwhile, Disney owned the rights to these characters. So they were going to make a Toy Story 3 without Pixar. They were going to do it in their own internal separate animation studio. And it was getting very contentious. But then Michael Eisner left Disney. Bob Iger joined the company, and he felt like, we have to buy Pixar. There was a quote or something where he said that he walked around one of the Disney parks and there were no recent Disney characters in the parks other than the Pixar characters. He's like, this is the future of the company. Yeah. We have to buy Pixar. Bob Iger bought Pixar and then let them do what they wanted. They wanted to do Toy Story 3. It wasn't that they didn't want to do it, but they wanted to do it on their terms. And all the scripts that were in development at this other animation studio inside Disney, they were all thrown in the garbage. Apparently one was going to be, they go to Andy's grandma's house and toys are disappearing. So it's kind of like a murder mystery. There was another script where Buzz has a defect and he's sent back to Taiwan and all the toys go to Taiwan looking for him. So when Pixar was making Toy Story 3 and they were going to make it their way, they had the big budget. They had time. They were not rushed. They didn't have to get it out by a certain date because the powers that be told them so. And so that's why this movie has the very high production value. This was directed not by John Lasseter, but by Lee Unkrich. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. He had worked at Pixar for a long time. He said something like, I don't want to be the one who makes the first Pixar bomb. And like you said, it made $1 billion. Mission accomplished. But okay, so you saw this movie before. Did you see it in the theater when it came out?
I don't believe I did. No, I think I caught this on DVD or something.
Okay, so this movie came out in the summer of 2010. Eli was born early in 2010. I was talking with my sister about how we were going to go see Toy Story 3, and she said, "You're going to bring Eli? He's like 6 months old. Isn't that too young to go to a movie?" And we were like, of course he's too young. Eli's not going. Courtney and I are going to see Toy Story 3. I remember that we were both very, very excited to see this in the theater. We're adults, but we're kids at heart. And this was after Ratatouille and WALL-E and Up and just amazing Pixar movies. We were genuinely excited to watch Toy Story 3. I think maybe Sam was our babysitter. Also, we had a newborn, so it was nice to get out and have a date. We saw it in a theater that was actually, maybe surprisingly, given how well it did at the box office, it was empty. I think it was me and Courtney and then 2 teenagers on a date who were making out the whole time. But let's talk about the opening of the movie.
Yeah, another great opening.
It's so much fun. Again, with the $200 million budget, they're showing off with this opening. It looks great. It's thrilling. It's filled with callbacks to the playtime from the first movie, from Toy Story 1. Mr. Potato Head is robbing the train and he says, money, money, money. And then, I brought my attack dog with a built-in force field. Well, I brought my dinosaur who eats attack dogs. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the lines are lifted straight from Toy Story 1. But in Toy Story 1, when we see it, we just see the toys as, limp, lifeless toys that Andy's moving around. Here, this is in his imagination.
This is the exact same play session you mean?
It's not the exact same because in Toy Story 1, Jesse and Bullseye aren't there.
Right.
And there's no
Okay.
train with the trolls.
Okay.
So it's close. You would probably imagine that this playtime is shortly after the events of Toy Story 2. Not only is it just the callbacks, but there's that great moment when the train goes off and you think all of the little orphans, the trolls, are dead, but then Buzz Lightyear comes to the rescue and it's this great moment.
The opening scene was so much better than anything we saw in Toy Story 1 or 2.
Yes.
Even those ending animation sequences, and I was just very, very impressed by that.
Yes. This is Andy as a little kid. He's playing. Then it transitions to this is the present, right at the line of "You've got a friend in me" with "Our friendship will never die." And then it's like, oh, maybe their friendship did die because now the toys are just in the toy chest, desperate to have any interaction with Andy. They steal his flip phone, and then they call the flip phone from the house phone. And it looks like, even though that's an older cell phone, that it would have had caller ID. So he would have realized that the house phone was calling his cell phone, and he would have thought that was weird. But that doesn't happen.
Star 67.
Right. I mean, he could have, you know what? If he had done that, then he would have realized that his toys were sentient. But instead, he blames his little sister. And there's the misunderstanding of the movie where Andy takes the toys and puts them in a garbage bag. He's going to bring the garbage bag up into the attic, but then he gets distracted. Mom takes the garbage bag to the curb, and they're like, well, he thought we were garbage. No, he was going to put them in the attic. It is kind of a dumb misunderstanding because Andy's mom very clearly gives him a box that says attic written on it. So if he wants to put the toys in the attic, he should put the toys in that box clearly labeled attic. As a father of a teenager, I can 100% believe that that kid would walk right past the box that says attic and grab a garbage bag and put the toys in the garbage bag and then think that's what goes in the attic. Because teenagers, they don't listen.
The second he picked up the bag, I was like, that's so stupid. And so many people have made that mistake. And I thought exactly what you did. I go, yeah, 17 is about a good age to learn that terrible mistake, that you do not store things in black garbage bags ever. That is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea.
Right.
So I also thought, yeah, it's a terrible idea that I think everyone has done and made that mistake.
The animators say that the hardest thing to animate in this movie was the garbage bags in this part, and then at the dump at the end, because just the way that they move with the stuff in them.
I'm sure the light reflecting off of every folded piece of plastic.
Exactly.
You almost want to like rotoscope it, which is, film it in real life and trace it. The garbage bag must have been very difficult.
Apparently so. I think I've asked you this before. You didn't see the movie Weapons, right, from last year?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Maybe it happens in Toy Story 1 and 2, and I just didn't notice it until Toy Story 3. But when Woody is running after the other toys in the garbage bag, he's running like the kids in Weapons. If you know, you know. That's not a spoiler for the movie Weapons. The kids run weird.
About the beginning of this film, too, it's very clear to me that toys, at least once they're aged a little bit, they're so traumatized by owners changing hands. And there's somewhat of an element of depression with all these dolls in the beginning. And
yeah,
most of these toys are going to get thrown out. And it's deep things for Toy Story 3.
You talk about depression. I don't know that you could maybe map all 5 stages of grief, but it does sort of come down to acceptance. And honestly, that's how Toy Story 2 ends. Toy Story 2 ends with Woody understanding that Andy is going to grow up and discard him eventually, and he has accepted it. And that's one thing to understand and accept in theory, but here we are in Toy Story 3 when it is actually happening, and that's very different.
I mean, it's about mortality. I mean,
yes.
in some ways, a doll is immortal. Like when Woody falls out of a tree at some point, he's perfectly fine. But toys have a finite life, like anything else. And in some ways, mortality defines your existence. Without mortality, there's almost no point in life. Not to get too deep in a podcast about Toy Story, but it's something that we all have to think about. But everyone from Lotso to Jessie and all the other toys, they all have this trauma. And I think they all have different ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, and when Chuckles, the clown, when he tells his backstory, which is also Lotso and Big Baby's backstory, it does evoke Jessie's story from Toy Story 2 about having a kid who loved you and then getting lost and how the toys deal with it. In Toy Story 2, Jessie was depressed. It worked out okay for Jessie, but it doesn't seem like a giant leap to imagine a character going through that rejection and then turning into Lotso, turning into someone who is just filled with not even anger, but rage at the world for being cast off, for being rejected, for being replaced. You would hope that someone would be able to come back from that, but you can see how a very similar story can play out. And yeah, Jessie just gets really sad and bitter, but is able to move on, whereas Lotso is fueled by anger, vengeance, resentment, and cannot move past it.
Jessie openly says, it's Emily all over again.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right about the origin story of Lotso is different and even worse than what happened to Jessie or what could possibly happen to Woody or any of these things, because Lotso, he's accidentally left on the side of the road and they make this incredible journey all the way back to the home. They got a brand new Lotso.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no reason to ever look for that old toy. In fact, you might almost think the old toy is worse because it's yuckier.
Sure, it was abandoned on the side of the road.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's evil, but I think there's an understanding of like where it came from.
Yeah. Before Chuckles tells his backstory, there's the playtime scene at Bonnie's where Woody is with all of these new characters, Bonnie's other toys. It's a little bit different from Andy because Bonnie is part of the story. She's having the tea party. The other toys consider themselves like, actors in a play. It's adorable in part because Bonnie is just a super adorable kid. Just the character design of her with the round cheeks and everything, you just fall in love with her instantly. And she's so cute with the toys and the tea party, and she's doing all of the voices. And you see it in Woody's face that he is loving this because, as we know from the first two movies, there's nothing better for a toy than being played with. And Woody has not been played with in a decade-ish, give or take. And yeah, he's lucky that he hasn't been donated or thrown out or yard saled or whatever, but he was neglected. And now he is finding that joy by being played with Bonnie. I really love that part of the movie.
Yeah, and I also like that they introduce a real antagonist in the film. Lotso, who has a very interesting underground capos, and they have the illegal gambling thing at night.
Yeah.
And it's on the top of the vending machine. And all this stuff is very funny.
Yeah.
I just like the prison-like environment about it. The fact that Lotso comes, and it's John Goodman, right?
No, it's Ned Beatty.
Ned Beatty. Oh, sorry. That's right. Ned Beatty. I just love this idea that Lotso comes off as this benevolent, very sweet grandpa-like teddy bear. He's limping with a cane.
Which makes sense because he's a plush toy. And he's an old plush toy. So yeah, he would need a cane probably.
Right. He tells them, this is paradise. There will never be another trauma because there will always be new kids. And then they ask him, what happens when they grow old? And he says the most brilliant thing. He says, there'll be new kids that will come and love you. And in certain ways, he's absolutely right. In some ways, that being a toy here is absolutely what they're looking for.
Yeah. It makes sense that this could be toy nirvana.
Exactly. And then you get the humor about that what a toy in a daycare is like, and that they're absolutely destroyed every single day, which is not untrue.
Sure.
The only bad thing is that I'm sure it does lower their lifespan and that they do get thrown out much easier.
It makes sense in how the movie ends, kind of in that post-credit scene, or I guess during the credits, where you see that life at Sunnyside is great because now there is fairness and equity. The toys rotate out of who's in the caterpillar room and who's in the butterfly room, because the toys in the caterpillar room, they do have it rough. They are abused, but then they get the massage treatments and they get repaired and then they go back into the butterfly room. It makes sense that this kind of thing could work. And the reason it doesn't is because Lotso created this system where he's in charge. Barbie has a line, authority should derive from the consent of the governed, not from the threat of force. She's right. Lotso's basically a fascist dictator or a corrupt prison guard or however you want to frame it. I did kind of like that Barbie is an intelligent character who is capable of doing more than just looking pretty in cute outfits. That's Ken, by the way. Ken is the totally vapid, vain character in that dynamic that would be explored even more in the Barbie movie of 2023, 24, something like that. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting that you get a little preview of that here.
I didn't really like Ken's character until he decided to get with the program and actually not follow Lotso anymore. It was a little bit one-dimensional of like, okay, so Ken's super into fashion and he likes putting on these scarves and everything. Like, okay, I get it.
That's fair.
I did find Barbie fun in that she said things I didn't expect from her, even though she was super into the fashions and the dream house and everything.
I think you could make the argument that Barbie being really intelligent, it's kind of a joke of, haha, bet you didn't think she was smart. Yeah, it's subverting expectations, but also kind of playing into, you think she's a dumb bimbo.
I didn't think it was funny for that expectation. I just thought it was funny that she's suddenly saying something so professorial.
With Ken, to your point, yes, he is a one-note character. And there's a moment when Bookworm thinks it's Ken wearing high heels, but it's Barbie, and Bookworm kind of makes a yeesh kind of a sound. And then at the end, also when the scene going on with during the credits, they think that the letter is written by Barbie, but it's not. It's Ken. Ken has wonderful handwriting, and they kind of all react of like, ooh. They're laughing at Ken for being feminine, which is not a great joke.
Yeah, I didn't like that joke. He wrote in purple ink, and he had neat handwriting. Okay, it's just kind of a lazy joke.
Exactly. But let's get into the prison break sequence, because I think that is where this movie really, really shines. The people who worked on it say that they watched every prison break movie, and, you know, there's a lot of them, to get ideas for how they were going to do it. Woody has a plan. The talking telephone gives him the information he needs about the cameras and the toy trucks and the monkey that's watching everything. And so he tells everybody, listen, guys, I've got a plan. Whisper, whisper, whisper. So that everything that happens, we, the audience, don't know, but of course the characters do. It's fun. It's interesting seeing how Mr. Potato Head can kind of take himself apart, and all of his parts have sentience and they can attach themselves to a tortilla.
The tortilla man was great.
Yeah, and then a cucumber. The original Mr. Potato Head was just the accessories, the eyes and the mouth and the ears and everything, and you were supposed to stick it into an actual potato, but then the parts had to be pretty sharp so that it would puncture a potato, which makes sense, and parents didn't like that, so then they started making the plastic toy head.
No, I'm guessing kids swallowed them. As a pediatric gastroenterologist, that's probably what happened.
Oh, you don't want to swallow something sharp? Oh, that's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
I believe you. I can imagine kids doing that, but ooh. Also, while all of this is happening, Buzz is evil now. Lotso and his goons switched him into demo mode, and then he goes from demo mode to being in Spanish mode, which is also basically the mode he was in the beginning of Toy Story. He believes he is a real space ranger. He is working for Star Command and protecting against the threats of Emperor Zurg and his sinister agents and blah, 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 blah. I enjoy Spanish Buzz.
The Spanish Buzz was great. I saw something that Tim Allen originally recorded the lines in Spanish, and then there was a Spanish dialect coach that would like tell him the correct way to say it. Every single word was incorrect, you know, like most people would. And it was the right decision for them to switch to a native Spanish speaker because you didn't have to understand his Spanish, but it was just so well spoken. And he spoke like, one of these telenovela guys. And I loved Spanish speaking Buzz. And the idea that he's programmed with all these languages just gives me this idea more about how, yeah, these are just pieces of plastic toys made in the billions just for people around the world.
The original Randy Newman song in this movie is We Belong Together, which I think is lovely. It's a very nice song.
I think it's fine.
Exactly. It's nowhere near as good as the Gypsy Kings doing their Spanish version of You've Got a Friend in Me. I'll give you a little pop quiz, James. This is the second movie we've done on the podcast where the Gypsy Kings do a Spanish cover of a famous English song. Can you guess the movie and song?
No, you'll have to give me one of them.
I'll give you a hint. It's a movie that you enjoyed and thought it was fine, but you didn't love it anywhere near as much as me and our very special guest.
Well, it's not The Hustler. I'm trying to think of movies that I was like, meh.
We had a guest. That's a big hint.
No, I can't think of it.
Okay, in The Big Lebowski, the Gypsy Kings do a Spanish version of Hotel California, which is also a great cover.
Ah, yes. Oh, yeah. You guys were not happy that I just liked that film.
Yes, yeah, your opinion on that is still very, very wrong. But yeah, I love the Gypsy Kings version of You've Got a Friend in Me. So the whole prison break sequence is super thrilling. It kind of comes to a head when they're on top of the dumpster and, Woody tells Lotso he knows his backstory. Then they get taken into the dumpster and they go to the dump. This is another thrilling action scene, just like we had at the end of Toy Story 1 and 2, where everything that could possibly go wrong keeps going wrong, and they keep getting out of it. First, they're crushed by all the garbage, and they find each other, and then Buzz is crushed by a TV, but then he's back to regular Buzz, and then they're on the conveyor belt. They use the magnets. They go to the top, so they're not destroyed that way. And then when they're heading to the incinerator, Jessie says to Buzz, "What do we do now?" And Buzz takes her hand. And that's also a thing that the whole movie, he couldn't hold her hand. He's got a crush on Jessie, but he can't ever say anything or do anything about it. He takes her hand, and all the toys take each other's hands. There are no words spoken. It is just acceptance that you see on their faces, in their eyes. Woody's the last one to take Buzz's hand, and then they form the full chain. I remember vividly watching this in the movie theater. This was the last in the trilogy. I didn't really expect that they were going to kill all these characters, but there is, 30 seconds, 60 seconds where it just seems like this is the end. The toys believe it. Courtney and I believed it in the theater. And then when the aliens come in and they say, "The claw," that has got to be one of, if not the best callbacks ever.
Right.
That's a callback from 15 years ago, from the first Toy Story movie, that these aliens love the claw. They worship the claw. The only thing that matters to them is the claw. And they save the day with the claw. I mean, perfect. 10 out of 10. It's amazing.
It was a very big release because you thought you were about to see trauma, but it's complete 180-degree change and rescue, and everything is all better.
Yeah.
I will watch that scene on YouTube once in a while when I want to watch like a good 4-minute scene that has a good payoff.
So, they escape, and then they're able to get back home to Andy because they see the garbage truck driver who we saw at the beginning of the movie. He's on their route, so they hitch a ride with that garbage truck driver, who is canonically Sid. And the reason that it's Sid is because he's wearing a skull t-shirt. I didn't get it, that was supposed to be Sid.
I didn't know that, and I don't necessarily agree with that. Wouldn't he be like 2 years older than Andy?
I guess he would be a couple years older than Andy, but maybe so Andy's going to college and he's got a job as a sanitation worker? Sure.
He kind of looked middle-aged.
You can't really see his face at all because he's wearing the goggles and he has the headphones on. The only way you can identify that it's Sid is because of the skull t-shirt. Fine. Okay, they wanted to bring Sid back. It's the same voice actor, Eric Von Detten, who played
Oh.
Sid in the first movie. They did also bring back the same actor who did Andy in the first movie. And there's merch. There's like trading cards and things that say that it is, in fact, Sid in Toy Story 3. But then the toys are back home. Woody has this great idea of what he can do that's better than going to college. Because Andy was going to bring Woody to college with him. Just as a sidebar, did you bring any toys with you to college? Because you seem like the kind of guy who would have brought a toy from your childhood to college.
Yeah, I brought one or two.
Okay.
And there wound up being a nostalgia contest when we were sophomores, and I brought some of my Masters of the Universe action figures, and I won.
Nerd.
I think that it's perfectly fine to have one little thing from childhood.
That kind of doesn't surprise me at all that you brought your He-Man toys to college.
I didn't play with them. I mean, I had them on like a desk and like in the background somewhere.
Sure. But when Andy gives the toys to Bonnie, that is very, very emotional. It's a little bit weird how Andy doesn't notice that Woody's in the box. Andy thinks he's done taking all the toys out of the box, I think with Buzz. And then Bonnie notices that there's one more in there. And Andy's surprised, like, how did Woody get in there? I'm guessing the implication is that Woody was not in the box because we see like a point of view shot from the car when Andy's taking the box to Bonnie. So maybe then Woody somehow snuck out of the car, across the street, and then flung himself into the box. It doesn't matter. It's really not important because that scene is just so heavy. It's so emotional when he's telling Bonnie about all the toys and their personalities and how Ham will hold your money, but he's also the dastardly villain. And Bonnie's so happy with the toys. And then he hesitates when it comes to Woody, but he decides to give her the toy and he hands it to her. I was crying in the scene when all the toys were holding hands and facing their death. At this part of the movie, I was not just crying. I was sobbing, crying with sounds. It was an ugly, ugly cry. And watching the movie the other day, having seen it before, knowing exactly what was going to happen, I was crying again. From the moment in the dumpster up until the end of the movie, I'm just crying the whole time. I was in 2010 and I was the other day watching it. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess you weren't crying. You're not much of a movie crier.
I don't really actually have tears come out, even though I'll get very sad about it. You know, that threshold, if that's a threshold, no, I don't think I had water coming out of my eyes, but
Okay.
I specifically remember watching that scene with Andy, like, oh my God, this is so sad. And I did not think that at all on the conveyor belt. I just thought I was very anxious and it was tension and it was brilliant, but I didn't think that was sad, that part. But the Andy part absolutely broke me. Michael Arndt, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he wrote this film. And when I heard that he was the writer of the Star Wars sequels, Lego sequels, the 7, 8, and 9, and then that didn't ultimately happen, I was very, very happy because I just thought that this script was so well written.
Got it. But James, what do you think about Toy Story 3 as a whole? Do you think this movie stands the test of time?
Absolutely. I think this might be the best of the trilogy. That doesn't mean it's my favorite. I still think if of these three, one is my favorite. It's just I like the smaller adventure here and just the idea of the new toy Buzz and the worry about the birthday party. I thought that was just a little simpler and less traumatic like the end of 3. Again, 2 is a great film as well, but all 3 of these films are wonderful. There's, I think, a few more adult jokes in this film when they're playing in the sandbox and Ham says, I don't think those were Lincoln logs. You know, obviously that was probably poop in there. But overall, this movie is so well done. It's longer than the other films. This is a real solid 2-hour film. I think it's a few minutes short of 2 hours, but I think it does end the trilogy. That being said, Bonnie is obviously the beginning of a brand new story. So I think the argument that Quentin Tarantino makes is valid, that it's a closed story and there's no need for 4. But you can make the argument, that it's just a brand new trilogy. It's the Bonnie years, if you will. So I think that the film stands a test of time. Will I see Toy Story 4? I personally have no interest in seeing it. I am curious about Toy Story 5. I talk to patient parents all the time about AI and iPad and screen time. So I think there's certainly something I'm interested in that one. But this trilogy is brilliant. It's so good. And it's timeless. It really is. It's so many years later. And yes, this film stands a test of time. What about you, Al?
Yes, this movie stands the test of time. I agree with you that it's the best of the trilogy. We talked about the progression from 1 to 2 to 3, where 1 works on a different level for adults, 2 has that one scene that's really sad, and 3, the entire ending of this movie is gut-wrenching. I mean, I remember crying in the theater when Eli was 6 months old and thinking, oh no, he's going to grow up so fast, and being sad about that when he was just a little baby, and watching it now as he's going into junior year of high school, it hits different, but also the exact same. And it's just really powerful and emotional and beautiful, and also really fun and exciting and thrilling. From the opening to the prison break stuff, there's just so much going on. At the end of the day, I think it's a movie about saying goodbye, which is always hard at any age, whether you're a kid, a teenager, a sentient toy, whatever. It's just a powerful, emotional, absolutely beautiful movie. This is the second time I saw Toy Story 3 start to finish. Caught little pieces of it here and there over the years with the kids, but I remembered a lot of it from seeing it in 2010. Toy Story 4, we saw in the theater, and also just that one time, I really did not remember much. And that's only 7 years ago. We saw Toy Story 5 yesterday. I wanted to rewatch Toy Story 4 just as kind of a refresher, to just kind of see what I thought about it now. We just didn't have time. I read a Wikipedia synopsis of it. Like, oh, okay, this is what happens. Right. I remember Forky and Bo Peep and blah, blah, blah. But I remember walking out of the theater then thinking that it was fine, meh, whatever. Toy Story 5, I did really like. It is a bit preachy in terms of the opening rants about how technology is destroying playtime and kids need to use their imagination. And I'm not saying I disagree with that, but it's really on the nose. Then also the way it kind of wraps up does make sense, considering that this movie is made by Disney, a company that really wants kids to be playing games on their iPads. So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But I enjoyed it. I was emotional. I did cry during the end of Toy Story 5. I won't spoil it, but there's a moment at the end that hit me like a ton of bricks. Both kids were laughing at me for crying. They didn't cry. Courtney didn't cry. Also saw the movie with my mom and stepdad. They didn't cry. I was the only one of the 6 of us who was crying. But I will say it wasn't the loud, sobbing, ugly cry. That only happened in Toy Story 3. So progress there, I guess. But yeah, Toy Story 3 is just an amazing, wonderful, incredible, beautiful movie. And I'm glad that we did it on the podcast. I'm really glad that we got to rewatch it. This was fun. I was looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, it's a wonderful trilogy.
Definitely. And, you know, there are many more Pixar movies that are 15 years or older that we can do on the podcast. I would like to come back and revisit some of those. I think they're making another Incredibles, so we can watch that. They're making another Monsters Inc. kind of movie, so when that comes out, we can go back and watch Monsters Inc. I haven't seen that in ages. But that is going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about the 1984 movie Supergirl. There's a new 2026 movie also called Supergirl. I saw the 84 Supergirl, I think, just once. In the meantime, we want to hear your thoughts about the Toy Story movies, about Toy Story 3 specifically, or any Toy Story movies, Woody, Buzz, Jessie, Lotso, Forky. You can talk about any of the characters. It's fine. We love hearing from you guys. You can comment on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, where we are at Test of Time Pod. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.